Welcome to the Hazard Class Podcast. This is the podcast where I get to ask my stupid questions to some of the smartest people in and around the world of emergency services. My guest this week is a fire lieutenant hailing from Madison, Wisconsin. He's the longtime president of the Madison Professional Firefighters Local 311 and the president of the Professional Firefighters of Wisconsin. He was most recently elected in 2024 as the IAFF 5th District Vice President, which represents Minnesota, Wisconsin, North, and South Dakota. My guest this week, Mr. Mahlon Mitchell. Mahlon, thank you for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Good to be here. Good to be with you, brother.
Yeah, awesome. I appreciate the time you taking to chat with me, get to know you a little bit more, and then talk about the IAFF in totality, what's going on this year, what kind of the hope of the future is. So as is the format of the show, we open up every show with the Wheel of Stupid Questions. Just a reminder that asking questions is good. Even if they're stupid, if you point them at the right people, you can get some pretty smart answers. So we'll bounce right into that, and then we'll get into the interview. Okay, real wheel, spinning the wheel. We'll see what we get. Yeah, we'll see if you have an opinion about this at all. In the movie Rambo: First Blood, do you think John Rambo is the good guy or the bad guy?
Well, you won't believe this, but I don't think I've ever seen that movie.
Oof, this is a hard one to stomach. Man, you've never seen Rambo: First Blood? Oh,
you know,
that's okay. Well, you got homework after the podcast now.
That's with Rocky, right? I mean, Sylvester Stallone.
Yeah, it's quintessential Rambo. That's the first one. It's probably the best one. But yeah.
Oh, I don't think I've seen it, man.
Oh man, okay. Well, we'll move on. I'm gonna not get too worked up about it. We'll move on. That's homework. It'll change your life.
But I'll say this. I'll say he was a good guy.
Oh, good take. That's a good take. All right, let's get into the real deal. So let's talk about the origin story. How do you get into the fire service?
I get into fire service. I've been on the job about 27 years now. I actually went to school to be a chef. When I got out of high school, I thought I wanted to own a restaurant. I still want to own a restaurant, actually. But I started actually in the fire service after my brother got hired. My older brother got hired. The fire department, he actually is in Atlanta now. Atlanta Fire Department. My younger brother, Paul, Fire Department. Jermaine Mitchell, my older brother, Cameron. But my older brother started a trend. And so when I was out I lived in Illinois at the time, after I kind of wanted to get out of culinary school, I started attending classes, EMT classes, and Fire 1 and 2 classes at College of DuPage in Glen Ellen, Illinois. And then I went, it was unbelievable because I went and I applied at every Chicagoland fire department surrounding Chicago, the suburbs. But you had to be 21 or older. At the time, I was like 18 or 19. And just one day, I opened up the Chicago Sun-Times, and there was a ad for firefighters in the city of Madison, the one and only time they did it. And I applied in the city of Madison. I'm actually from Wisconsin, born in Milwaukee, but lived in Delavan for the majority of my youth. And I applied in Madison. I got hired in Madison and Peoria, Illinois at the same time. And me and my wife, we chose Madison.
Wow.
And that's how the story goes, man.
So there was no family history in the fire service prior to your older brother?
No, not at all. It was just my older brother started, and he had this, everyone grows up, right? As a kid, I had fire trucks as a kid. Everyone grew up wanting to be a firefighter. But how to actually do that was a mystery. Mm-hmm. So I never really thought about it after, my youth. But my older brother really started a trend, and now it's the family business.
Are you still the best chef in the firehouse?
No, not at all. I actually don't even like cooking that much, which is crazy. But
the tables turn, I guess.
I get into it because I still want to own a restaurant. I think even though that's one of the most volatile businesses, I still think owning a restaurant will be top notch, and it maybe it's something I'll do when I retire. Nothing big or extravagant, but just some like smaller, quaint, nice meals. A couple specialty items, good drinks, and some fun, and sit around. And I can talk about people and tell stories, kind of like what we're doing now.
Yeah, exactly. So this is the one I ask a lot of the guests. Do you remember your first fire? Like, what is 27 years ago? You said now.
Yeah, I do remember it. Like it was yesterday, actually. It was just a single family house, 2-story. I went in with my officer. I remember it because I stepped on a cat. And I just remember I knew it wasn't the floor. And I remember putting my light down on the floor, and then there was a cat there. And actually we pulled the cat out, and the cat actually survived. Well, that was my first fire. It was pretty bread and butter. We made it to the second floor. Fire was in a room on the back end of the hallway. Put the fire out, and then it's pretty standard kind of fire that you can get, especially being new. That was in 1998.
Wow. So you've been in union politics then for a very long time now too. How do you make the transition from getting into the fire service, then deciding you want to be involved in working with the union?
Yeah, it's interesting because when I got involved in the fire service, I never thought about being a union officer. I never thought about being on an executive board or any of that. I had a pretty hard-nosed, pretty hard-line lieutenant when I came on a job. Matter of fact, he didn't want a rookie. But he was no nonsense, no BS kind of guy that when he said something, I was. So other than at the firehouse, when he told me, it's like, hey, you got to go to union meetings, I took that as an order. Like, right, I didn't take it as like I can or I may go or I shall go. It was like, you're going. So my first union meeting, he actually picked me up. I think I had right out of academy, about 2 weeks, 3 weeks in the station. There was a union meeting. So he said he's going to pick me up at 7 o'clock. The union meeting started, I think at that time, 7:30. He picked me up at 7 o'clock. We went there. He told me on the way there, he's like, you sit in the back. You don't say anything. You're there to listen, observe, and learn. And you'll meet some new people after the meeting. So after the meeting, we went through a union meeting. After the meeting, he told me to go up to our vice president at the time. And he said, hey, just go and volunteer. So I went up to Tim Healy at the time, our vice president, said, Mr. Healy, my name is Mahlon Mitchell, brand new on the job. And at that time, I was like 19, 20 years old, and I was about 150 pounds soaking wet. So he looked at me like I was a little kid, like, who the hell are you?
Yeah.
So I went and introduced myself, and I said who I am, and I said I'd love to help out. I'd love to be part of the union and do whatever I can. So he told me to actually go and meet him at the golf outing that we had 2 weeks. I showed up. He told me to be there at 7 a.m. with a golf outing that starts at like 11. So I'm sitting there for like 2 hours. No one's there. The parking lot's empty. I thought I was at the wrong place, but he was testing me, right? But he shows up in his old Cadillac Eldorado or Cadillac, whatever, Seville, whatever it was, pulls up. He says, you made it. I didn't think he would stick. So I said, anything I can do, sir? So he put me to work. He gave me a list of the golfers. It was our union annual golf outing. Gave me a list of the golfers. And he said, I want you to go and grab their bags, put them on their carts, here are their numbers and here are their names. So I'm going to grab bags. No one knows who I am. They think I'm like taking their bags, like stealing them. They're like, well, who's this kid? Why is he taking our bags? He obviously doesn't work here because I didn't look like a worker. So that I worked there at least. So I was introduced myself, and it was a great way though to meet people. I did everyone that would allow me. I carried their bags to their carts, and that was my very first union job. Believe it or not, was carrying golf bags at the local 311 golf outing, and the rest is history.
Well, we're going to get into the history. So you go from carrying bags at the golf outing, and now you want to seek your first elected position in, I would presume you started with, local 311, right? So what's that decision like?
So my very first, so that was our golf outing. So that was ran by our charitable organization. Firefighters Local 311, we started our charitable organization, our Local 311 Charities in 1998. Actually, very shortly after I got on the job, after a bus fire that we had in Madison on the west side of town, where a man got on a bus, had a full thing of gasoline, poured it all over the bus, the driver, everyone there included, and lit himself and the bus and the driver and everyone on fire. And that's what kind of was a catalyst behind us starting our charities. Again, that happened like I think either right before, right after I got on the job, but that was the catalyst of starting Local 311 Charities. And so I got involved actually by someone nominated me to be one of our trustees. And that was in 1999, I believe. And that really my first official elected position was a Local 311 trustee as part of our charitable foundation. Then I subsequently got on the executive board for a station and was put in time in charge of our governmental affairs and getting our conduit together off at the local level.
So how long were you involved before you became the president of 311?
So I kind of did it backwards. So I was involved from 1998 until 2008 or 9. And when I say involved, meaning I had every job at a local level other than a principal officer. I was in charge of our governmental affairs. I did our charities work. I was on the executive board steward and member, helped out with some discipline things that the president had me do. And I became actually on our state board, the Professional Firefighters of Wisconsin in 2009. And then because of some things that transpired at the state level, the state president's job was open up. I was nominated for that. And I actually became state president in 2011 before I became local president in 2014.
Wow.
Because normally you would go from your local to being state president, but I kind of did it backwards.
How do you think that your involvement at the state was able to inform your decisions at the local level? Do you think that it impacted it?
Two separate, totally different jobs. A lot of people think that, and this is inside baseball politics, but they would think like being on a state board is just like being on a local board, just bigger. It's not that way at all. It's totally two separate functions. We all work together, all affiliates of the IAFF. But the local level job which I believe being local president is the hardest job in our union. But the local level job is a lot different than being state level. At state level, our job is to advance the interests of firefighters through legislation. It's our main goal. It is for our health and safety, hours, wages, work conditions, making state law and state rule better to help us better do our jobs, to protect us as firefighters and paramedics and our families. The local level, obviously, is where the rubber meets the road, right? It's the bread and butter. It's like hours, wages, work conditions, health and safety, retirement, security. And your job is to bargain contracts that directly impact our members on a day-to-day basis and bargain those success agreements that directly impact. And then also work with fire administration to have a labor management relationship that hopefully is not volatile, but one where you can kind of have creative compromise for complex problems and come up with benefit for the city, benefit for administration, the union, and our members. So that's tough. That's easier said than done a lot of times.
Yeah, in your experience now doing this longer than probably the vast majority of people will be that at the state level or the local level, what are some things that you see locals doing well and some things that you think that they could stand to learn to advance their own, whether that be their contracts or like the organization from a labor perspective?
Yeah, every local is different. I mean, like you take, for instance, my local, we have 580 plus members now ish. And 400 of those members are Madison proper, but we actually have 14 affiliates. So these are basically cities that are contiguous to Madison. We're all part of one local. We're basically amalgamated local. It's what they would call us, like on the West Coast. Mm-hmm. But we're a local of, the flagship is Madison. Then we have 14 affiliates, and those are 14 separate contracts that my team and I are bargaining at any given time. So we stay pretty busy with just contract negotiations by themselves. And that's 14 different municipalities, brings in 14 different mayors or town administrators, 14 different common councils, so 14 different chiefs. Wow. So we're dealing with all that at any given time. And what I think the biggest challenge, not that you asked this question, but the biggest challenge facing locals in the future is turnover, right? Where when I came on the job, my predecessor was local president for 18 years. You rarely see that now because people get burned out. We have generational differences now. So I think one of the biggest obstacles and one of the biggest things to look out for in the future is turnover among the ranks of principal officers. And turnover can be good too, though, right? But for the most part, you can take all the classes you want, and I've taken thousands of hours of classes to do this job. And that's all well and good, and that helps you build your foundation. But until you actually do the work and have the grind and see the time and effort it takes into doing this job, the time away from your families, time away from just doing what you want to do on the side, whether it be another job or even just rest and relaxation off the job, it's tough because when you're a union officer, whether you're a big local, it's like you never actually get a break from the job. Now, we choose to do it, and I love it. I love it to death. But you never actually have a break from the job. When you leave shift, someone's calling you, or you're coming back to the station to meet with chiefs, or you're going to the city hall to meet with elected officials to talk about the fire department. You're on the phone talking about the fire department. You're with a member talking about the fire department. So you never really leave it. And that for some, they love it, like myself. But for others, I think that's why we're seeing more of a turnover. You never really get to turn it off.
That kind of leads me to think I was saying, how has it been being, in the firehouse, still working, doing the job, and then also being, so deep into the weeds of the politics on, for a while it was, the state and local, but now even on the national scale, like it feels like not that it would be a disadvantage, but that it would just be this burden of information, that you're constantly having to give, and people have questions constantly. It's like, how do you balance like getting into the firehouse, doing the actual job, going on runs, and then like managing all those other things that you're a part of too?
I always say we all have the same amount of time in a given day, right? 24 hours. I choose to use those 24 hours to be part of something that's bigger than myself. And in my opinion, that's the union. So I like talking about our issues. I love going to the firehouse still. I work downtown at Station 1 where I'm a lieutenant. I have a great crew. Now, it's funny, most of the time, because my crew, so the local president of Madison has a particular spot. It's Station 1C. And that's been that way before I was president. It'll be that way after I'm gone. So my crew understands that I don't want to probably talk about the stuff like 24 hours a day, but they have questions, and rightfully so, and I answer them to the best of my ability. But going to different stations is good too. When I first became local president, I actually didn't take that station because I wanted to go around and speak to different members. So I was what's called a rover on our job. So I would be at a different station on every shift for the most part, and I could actually sit down and talk with people. But having the knowledge and the information just by being part of all these unions, these entities and these affiliates gives me a unique ability to actually be able to spread the message, whether it be via email, social posts, it's like one-on-one, or going to the station and talking to our members, or being at the general membership meeting and being able to answer questions that possibly some other local officers couldn't. So I look at it as a plus. I'm not going to be state president. This will be my last year. We're still working out transition. But I won't be state president for very much longer here in Wisconsin. Transitioning out that role. But just like I say in the fire service, when I go speak to our recruits and our rookies and our new people, I say enjoy every moment, enjoy every position because it goes so fast. Like I started out as a firefighter, then I was a driver, then I was a chief's driver, now a lieutenant on the lake rescue team. It goes so fast. Same thing with the union. I tell new union members, new exec board members, when we do orientations, like enjoy not being an officer, even if you want to be an officer one day. I just had this conversation with a brother on Wednesday at the bar. I said, enjoy, because he wants to be a principal officer in local. I said, enjoy not being an officer right now. I know it's kind of, you like it, you're in the know, you know more what's going on, but you also don't have that burden that a lot of local officers have, where you literally have in your hands because of your decision making, and how you advise them. Now we have attorneys. There's people smarter than me that help us out too. But at the end of the day, you're helping members with whatever situation they're dealing with. When their employment, you're helping them with like their lives. So that is a burden. And at times it's a cliche, but it does keep you up at night.
Yeah.
when you're dealing with some of this stuff. So it's not always easy, man.
So as I asked that question, now we'll transition exactly into me doing what I just asked you, what it's like to have to deal with, which is talk about some of the things that are going on the international stage, right, or the general membership stage. So the big one is going to be the passing of the Social Security Fairness Act. Can you kind of, for people that are maybe less aware or unaware of what that is and why it's significant, about, that was a really big win we recently had. Why does it matter?
Well, it's huge. It's huge and I'll try to make it as simple as possible. It's huge for our retirement security. So the WEP, it's called the Windfall Elimination Provision / a government pension, the widows, or the partners of those. In the WEP, the Windfall Elimination Provision, essentially says it was passed in 1983 under Ronald Reagan, I believe. And what essentially did was it made it so that if you have a pension, you will essentially lose about a third or close to even more than half of even if you have the units in Social Security from your part-time job, you still won't realize that Social Security benefit. Even though you worked for them on your days off, you don't get the full benefit of that Social Security because you have a pension. So what happened was members that were retiring, 75% of firefighters in the country don't pay into Social Security. So you wouldn't get it by way of being on a job. Like my job, Madison, we do not pay into Social Security. So I would not have enough units by just being a Madison firefighter to actually realize or benefit from Social Security. But now, with my part-time jobs, me being state president, local president, and now being a DVP, I'm paying into Social Security. But without that provision, the Social Security just this past couple of weeks, or being signed this past couple of weeks, I would lose more than half of my Social Security when I retire. What this bill does, it rights a wrong. Where if I have the number of units that I worked for, right? You don't get it if you didn't work. If you don't have the number of units that properly get Social Security, this bill essentially passed and allows us to get our pension, but also get our full Social Security benefits that we should get because we earned them. So for most retired firefighters, it will be on an average $500 more a month in their pockets. That again go into the community, that will go into the economy, but it's money that was earned that you were not getting before this bill was passed. And this bill is huge, man. This is probably the biggest bill, and I can't speak for the IAFF in its entirety, but I can say during my lifetime, being part of IAFF for 26, 27 years, this is the biggest bill. And I've heard folks that are been doing this a lot longer than me. This is the biggest bill that IAFF has passed, at least in my lifetime, but more importantly, I think, in the history of the IAFF, because it's actually putting real money, real dollars in our members' pockets. And the way it's being worked on for years, decades. And the way it got passed through a discharge petition, which there's only been like 5 in the history, discharge petitions, that essentially takes it out of committee, puts it right on the floor, basically is the way it goes. It got a floor vote of 327 for to 75 that were opposed. So it had Republican and Democrat bipartisan support. And the thing got passed. It got signed on this Sunday that we were actually at ALTS. So that was January 6th, I believe. Whatever that Sunday was, it got passed. And our general president was at the White House, Ed Kelly, when it got passed and signed, or when it got signed by President Biden. So it's a big effing deal, as Biden would say.
Yeah, big. That's great. And I'm happy to have you explain it. So I know there's been some, maybe not disinformation, but lack of information that some people that, aren't into reading a lot about it didn't quite understand. But I so appreciate that. So next thing I want to hit on is the fight to remove PFAS from turnout gear. I know this is a big one for GP Kelly, and trying to just plug down this line of getting this removed for the sake of our membership. I understand there's some things that have been updated through the NFPA that are starting to come down the line. Where are we at with that? What's the update?
So a quick update is NFPA 1970, the PPE standard. We had many members from the IAFF that provided expert testimony. And what we essentially got is what we wanted, and that was to actually have, we're not all the way there yet, I shouldn't say that, but actually have chemical substances lists that essentially would be banned or prohibited from being used in our gear. And there's a list of not just PFAS, but other substances that are used in our gear and additives that there's actually a list that's spelled out in the standard. There was about 5 cities that did a PFAS-free gear turnout study. And those cities were, I'm going to look at them here quick: Denver, Miami, Ottawa, Prince George's County, and San Francisco. The report should be out soon from those studies. But essentially, there's a working on it from 2 or 3 different angles. There's the NFPA standard, not using a UV lighting to change that standard. 1970 standard just came out that regulates or garners the PPE. There's the PFAS-free next-gen gear study that's happening. And legislatively, they're actually looking at, it's called Next Generation Protective Gear. There's a bill in the House that essentially would provide funding to do more research for gear. It would be under the Homeland Security, I believe, but would provide more research for gear. Also have firefighters part of that research and part of that gear, and have the IAFF actually also be part of that. So going forward, we wouldn't just have scientists creating our gear, but we have firefighters and folks industry experts that actually use the gear being part of that research as well. So it's being hit from all different angles, and IAFF is leading that charge.
That's great. So we couldn't have a conversation and talk about the fire service without touching, at least in part, with California. I don't know when this is going to come out, but it's the 17th of January right now. And so we're in the midst of the fires in the Palisades and everything, the devastation that's happening on the West Coast. What has been the IAFF's involvement to this? Obviously, I've seen them sending support. I saw the general president was out there. What has been the IAFF's role in supporting that local and that community through this?
It's been intense. Our General Secretary Treasurer, Frank Lima, actually lives out in LA. So we were all out in New Orleans at our educational conference. He actually went home early because of the fires and how it was quickly approaching the area that he also lived in. So our general president went out there right away. They walked the grounds with some elected officials to kind of survey the damage. But it's horrific. Now, I haven't been out there, and I'm seeing everything that you're seeing on TV. So I don't have any inside information. I can say that the communications we're getting back from the IAFF, they're obviously through the IAFF Charitable Foundation. There's some giving that you can do there, and also through the IAFF. There'll be more information to come out. But we have our disaster assistance. So we never think. Well, a lot of our members, if you haven't been through a disaster like that, which most of us haven't, especially the hurricanes that happen down south and out east. You look at the flooding that happens down south and out east. Now look at the fires. Fast forward to the fires that are happening in LA, the Palisades today. Who takes care of the members that are out there taking care of the community, right? Because those members are at risk. Their homes, their families are at risk as well. But we're out as IAFF members, firefighters, paramedics. We're out there actually taking care of our communities, and that's nonstop. And I'm sure those brothers and sisters are working 24/7. And shifts are being changed, and they're working multiple shifts to help out and put out those fires. Well, who's taking care of their home? Who's taking care of their families, their husband or their wife or their kids at home? That's where the IAFF disaster assistance comes into play. And that's where there's regionally placed trailers. There's members that are part of disaster assistance that comes actually into that area to go to our members' house and helps their families get out and evacuate, or helps board up their home if there's a hurricane coming. So that's where the IAFF does, in my opinion, some of the greatest work that we do. And that is having our members' backs, helping those who help others, because they're out there. Somebody needs to take care of those members. And that's what the IAFF does. And they have done, and they continue doing. And they're doing it right now out in LA.
It's it's weird that, my involvement in our union and whatnot makes me think of the world in this way. But how do events like this influence public perception, and then the way that a union like us gets to talk to city officials, state officials, federal government, to seek funding, to ask for these things that we've been asking for a long time, that sometimes gets overlooked, and then we have disasters that, whether or not it's a contributing factor, I don't know enough about the details, but it's certainly, if you think about staffing, funding, equipment, all these things, all those things are going to play a factor into prevention of a horrible thing like this. How does on the backside of this, as we aggregate this information and see the devastation, does an organization like the IAFF make that actionable to see the changes we want to see happen?
Well, one of the IAFF's mantras is we're always on the front lines, right? So unfortunately, or I guess, it sounds weird to say it this way, but fortunately or unfortunately, tragedies bring light to a lot of things. So when something like this happens, you want to, which we always do, but it brings more light to it when it happens and it's happening right in front of you, or it's on CNN or national TV, right? When it's in the forefront of everyone's minds every day when it's on the news. So those are times, we got to step up, and we do that. And there's no doubt. I was watching on the news. I watched the state president out there, Brian Rice. I watched our international president, Ed Kelly. I saw Frank Lima out there and speaking to the media, making the videos and making the pitch that, adequate staffing, obviously adequate water supply, and adequate funding is important. And you look at things like, not to get too deep or go down a rabbit hole, but you look at things like the SAFER Act, which is for staffing from the federal government through Homeland Security, fire and for equipment. All those things are important, and all those things have to be adequately funded. Unfortunately, within this last go around, there's been like $32 to $36 million decrease in those federally funded programs for the fire service. We need that money, not for ourselves. We need it to actually make sure we're safe, so we have adequate staffing, because if we're not safe and have adequate staffing, having 4 on the rig at least minimum, having adequate response times, if we're not safe, then how can we make our community safe? Mm-hmm. So it starts with the IAFF. It starts with us, and it starts with our members, making sure we're always lobbying. And lobbying, all it is a fancy word for advocating and educating. We just need to advocate and educate our at the federal level, at the state level, and at the local level, or reverse it. The local level is where the rubber meets the road, right? That's where you get adequate staffing. But at state level, we're going to state houses in each respective states to bigger picture things to take care of our objectives so that we're safe as a whole. At the federal level, things like the SAFER grant, things like the Fire Act grant, those are all things that the IAFF works hard on. Lobbies our federal elect and makes the pitch of why those things are important and how we can maintain safety within our ranks, so we can attend that conveys and turns over to making our community a safer place.
So what else is on the International's docket for 25? As we look forward, obviously with the Social Security Fairness Act being a massive win that we've been working for a long, long time. PFAS is ongoing. We seem to have traction. What are some other things that we're trying to highlight in 2025 going forward?
There's a lot of things that are, as far as legislative priorities, probably the one that I think is, me personally, I think is one of the most important, is occupational cancer. We have a lot of brothers and sisters, unfortunately, that are dying of cancer, whether it be our gear, whether it be the things that are within. You look at the PFAS and the things that are in the toxic chemicals in furniture. It's been talked about a lot. Us car fires, our mask having metallic buildup. There's so many things that are happening. that unfortunately our job is hazardous as it is, right? It's inherent dangers within our job. We all know that when we take that oath. But some of the things, the byproduct of some of the things that we see and that are hurting us, like occupational cancer, are not things we necessarily knew we were signing up for. So there's a bill that essentially will provide, unfortunately, at a time of death right now, that public safety officer benefit, the PSOB benefit, the federal dollars that come if you die in the line of duty. There's bills and there's work being done to tie that also to allow occupational cancer to be part of that line of duty, essentially where the federal government will recognize it as truly a line of duty with occupational cancer, and your family or your state will realize that benefit. It's about 300, and don't quote me on that, but I know it's over $360,000, I believe, that will go to your family. So right now it's just tied to the line of duty death, right? So you die in fire, you had a car accident, you get hit, line of duty death, you get it. But occupation, it's also there for PTSD if you have clinically diagnosed PTSD as a result of that. That's part of it as well. And that's something that IAFF got passed years ago. The next step now is to tie occupational cancer to that as well. But the IAFF legislative priorities are vast. We look at, years ago when I came on the job, we did not talk about behavioral health per se. It was more like, you sign up for this, and if you can't take it, if you're not tough enough to take it, there's a door. But the IAFF has done a lot, and we've done a lot within our ranks back at home. And when I say we, I mean firefighters. Like the new generation, I think, has helped. But, we talk about behavioral health in a real way and don't just gloss over it. But you look at peer support teams. You look at statewide peer support teams. You look at IAFF has a peer support team as well that will actually go to places like LA and other places and talk to our members that are struggling through it. So there's a lot of things that the IAFF is doing that are doing in the forefront. You just talked about the gear, which again, linked to cancer. There's a lot of things that are being done to take care of our members. And IAFF is a great place, man. And I know I'm biased in saying that, but and even now being DVP, I got to IAFF, being DVP, my eyes have been opened even wider. And some of the things that IAFF's involved in when it comes to OSHA standards, NFPA standards, when it comes now, we have a full-time medical officer that works out of DC, works at the IAFF, Dr. Wu, that can provide medical and expert testimony. There's so many things that IAFF is involved in, and we've organized our district, our DVP Emeritus Tom Thornburg. Because of him, we were last year in 2024, we were fifth in IAFF and organizing new locals. And we're a small district, about 7,300 members. So there's a lot of exciting things happening and a lot of things that I want to build upon here at our district and also help to put in place at the federal level as well with the rest of the executive board and at the leadership of our general president.
Mm-hmm. So as we kind of start to wrap up here, what are some other resources that the IAFF has that some people maybe aren't aware of? Like that disaster assistance that you brought up, or some other way that people could either have a resource they didn't know existed or get involved in the IAFF in a way that maybe they weren't aware of?
Good question. Just some things like the grants that we get from FEMA. Just this last go around, the IAFF got a $2.5 million grant from the DOT. Essentially, it's the largest in IAFF history that will allow the IAFF to train additional 1,700 firefighters in hazmat. So IAFF is the biggest trainer in hazmat in the country right now. And some people don't know that you can petition IAFF through your district vice president, and you can actually get the IAFF to come in and do a lot of different hazmat classes. But we use it like right here in Madison. They do our onboarding for hazmat, for operational training for all our rookies. And we have a class of 30 right now, and they'll be getting that hazmat training from the IAFF, and it's free. Well, nothing's free, I guess. The federal government pays for it, but it's free. It's free, and it's not just for IAFF members. It's open up to volunteer departments use it as well. And they have certified trainers that come in for the week, for 3 or 4 days, and do your hazmat training. We have the Center of Excellence when we talk about behavioral health. There's a dedicated center, Advanced Recovery Systems, the Center of Excellence for the IAFF members out in Maryland. that only members where it comes to behavioral health issues, PTSD, AODA issues, where you put in, hopefully you get your insurance to pay for it. And we've had members from Wisconsin go and they come back as new people, and it's helped them. The rates for them wanting to go back are very, very low. It's been something that is just catered to firefighters, for our members. Because, going to talk, and everyone, means well in this field and in this community as far as behavioral health. But talking to a peer or someone that kind of gets us, we're a different group, as you know. So someone that gets us, or someone that's been through it, or someone that's on the job that can understand what we're going through is always shown to help. And peer-to-peer support has proven over time to be the better way of going about getting the help you need so you get back on the job and get back to doing what you love. But the IAFF, when it comes to our field reps, my job is DVP, making sure our locals are serviced. So when you have contract negotiations, we can do what's called a municipal financial analysis. Just your city telling you they're poor is one thing, or that they don't have money, because they're always going to say that. I don't care what city you're from. But we can actually look at that. And the IAFF can do what's called municipal financial analysis. We get public information, and we take that, and we actually have an analyst at the IAFF that look at that and tell you what the true financial stability or footing is in your city. We do GIS studies within IAFF, and all these things are covered by your dues. I just approved 2 GIS studies in our state just yesterday. We're working with the chiefs, working with administration to see where, we should have place stations. We can do fire-based EMS studies. We can do staffing studies. And IAFF does all these things along with education for our members. We have the alts every year. We have the 5th District Conference, which will be our district, which will be next year in the Twin Cities. And backing up a little bit, just so everyone knows, the IAFF, we should have started with this, Jake, actually.
Yeah.
The IAFF is split in 16 districts. So there's General President, Ed Kelly. He's out of Boston firefighter. There's our General Secretary Treasurer. His name is Frank Lima, LA City Captain firefighter. And then we have 16 district vice presidents. Our union is made up of about 352,000. We have 16 districts IAFF split up in. That's between United States and Canada. That's why we're called an international union. Our district that we're all in, that I'm the district vice president of, is Minnesota, North and South Dakota, and Wisconsin. Make up about 7,300 members. One of the smaller districts within the 16 districts, but we're the fearless 5th, man. We're one of the mightiest and the strongest. So that's my job, is to oversee. We got about 132 locals within our district. My job is to oversee and be that conduit between them and the IAFF, making sure they get the resources that we just talked about for the last 30, 40 minutes back home. And those resources are vast. They go from politics to getting PAC dollars back to you for mayor's race or alder races or governor races for state level sort of elected officials or races, to helping you with hazmat training, helping you with contract negotiations, like I just talked about, helping you with any kind of study that the IAFF can provide, whether it be governmental affairs shop, whether it be our educational shop, whether it be our GIS study, technical assistance and resources. IAFF is a one-stop shop for all those things. And that's why I love it. It's worth every frickin' penny. Can we curse on this? Or no?
You can say whatever you want. Yeah.
It's worth every fucking penny.
There you go. Beautiful. On that note, I don't know where we go from there. That's beautiful. Mahlon, thank you for joining me. I appreciate it. I thank you for the work you're doing in the 5th. I thank you for the work you're doing in the IAFF in general. And I appreciate, your commitment to the membership of the IAFF that you have had for your career and that we foresee into the future for you. So thank you so much.
Take care of my brother up there, man.
I will. I'll try my best. Thank you very much for joining me. I appreciate you.
All right.